Thank Almighty God for this opportunity once again to come to this Parliament to represent the dreams and aspirations of the people of Marco City and to lend my voice to the chorus of Bahamians who have declared in so many different ways that we are as gifted as anyone else anywhere else in the world, and we deserve to be the beneficiaries of the resources of this country, and that anyone who comes to cast their lot in the Bahamas with us, we welcome when they do so in the right way, and that we are prepared to work diligently to make sure that our children in the future, when they travel around the world to attend universities, that they realistically believe that there is a wonderful opportunity for them when they return to their country, and that their first option is not to think about residing somewhere else, building some other country. And so a part of our mission every day in the Free National Movement as we work is to involve Bahamians, those that are at home and those that are abroad, because we believe it is possible to contribute to national development, whether you're in the Bahamas or out of the Bahamas. But we do know that there are hundreds, quite possibly thousands of Bahamians who would have rather be home building this country, but have long since believed that there are insufficient opportunities for them. And so today, as I contribute to these two important pieces of legislation, I wish to reaffirm my and our commitment to helping to build a country where Bahamians who travel around the world will still have the view that I had when I went off to school, that no matter where I went, there was no country like the Bahamas, and I reasonably believe that I had a chance to be one of the persons who shaped the future of our country. Before I continue, Madam Speaker, I wish to extend condolences to a number of families who are grieving, and to say how much we grieve with you. We pray for you as members of Parliament on all sides of the divide. We attend many funerals every week, and our hearts go out to those family members who've lost persons who have been a fixture in their life. For some of them, they're confidant. For others, their source of inspiration, the breadwinner. And so we grieve with you and pray that God's Holy Spirit would provide peace in the midst of your storm. So for the families of Anthony Lewis from East Coral Estate, and I attended the funeral of Jane Gibson, and we also extend condolences to the family of Teddy Arthur and Bertlin Culmer. And of course, this Saturday, many Grand Bahamians will join in the homegoing service for the outstanding Grand Bahamian Dennis Martin from West Grand Bahama, Walter Smith Jr., and Marion Johnson, to the family of Betty Roberts. And as we remember Betty, many of us in here would remember just recently we laid to rest her cousin, outstanding Bahamian Josh Sayers. In New Providence, we extend condolences to the family of Berkeley Williamson. Many of us attended his memorial service at the Free National Movement headquarters, and we salute his family and thank them for lending him to us. And the Sayers family on the passing of Iris, the sister of Joshua Sayers, an integral part of the Free National Movement, but more importantly, a nation builder who embraced all Bahamians. And we remember today the families of Audley Dean and Mary Harding, Marjorie Francis, Stephen Sweeting, and Elaine Major, and Eloise Archer, Gregory Robinson. And to the Elutra family, we extend condolences to the McQueen family in Hatchet Bay on the passing of David McQueen, in particular his siblings Janine White and Bridget Johnson. Madam Speaker, I chose to extend condolences to all of these families because the truth is every week we are going to funerals. It's very rare that we miss a week. And Madam Speaker, it's something about sitting in a funeral. Your mind is, I believe, clearest when you're sitting in a funeral. You begin to reconcile what's important and what's not important. And it's unfortunate, myself included, that we leave right out of the funeral, having made some resolutions to call some family members more, to spend more time with people that we love, to tell people no matter what side of the political divide they're on, what jungle group they pull for, to say when there's something about them that you admire or something they did or said that was touching. And then we leave the funeral, we get back into the busyness of life, and unfortunately, we don't make the connections we need to with people. We retreat to our corners, as it was. If you were in a boxing ring, you go back to your corner and get your instructions, and we come out swinging in this life once again. And I think we miss some things. And so for this moment of clarity for me, I wanted to recognize the families of those persons who we've lost, but to remind myself as I remind us that life is truly fragile, and wherever we have a chance to extend the olive branch, wherever we have a chance to reach out and be a blessing to somebody else, we should seize it. And wherever we have a chance to fight for people who are voiceless, defenseless, we should rise to the occasion. And so today, I rise to speak not only about the registered land bill and the land adjudication bill, but also about what is at stake for every Bahamian who dreams of owning a piece of this country fairly, transparently, and without interference, whether it's from politicians or persons who are doing well in business. Whomever it is that could be an obstacle to each of us being a part of the shareholders of this country, its natural resources, its intangible and tangible resources. Land is not just a technical issue, so we don't see these bills in narrow terms, but we appreciate that land is the basis of so many struggles around the world. It has been the basis of wars, of some countries' ascension and others' decline. It has been a means where, like so many in this parliament and others who are not in public life, who've risen from humble beginnings to provide an inheritance for their children. I grew up primarily in Coconut Grove. I told the story before. I've lived through, Madam Speaker, no less than 6 or 7 of those corners. Jenny Street, Washington Street, Florida Court, Key West Street, Coconut Grove Avenue, 7th Street, The Grove. Lived in Yellow Elder twice. Lived in Mount Pleasant Village. And Madam Speaker, all of those places, that's before I graduated from high school. We moved a lot. It assisted me in develop a sensibility for different groups in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Spent summers in Cat Island, in New Bight, Cat Island, with my grandmother, Amelia Hepburn, a preacher, a farmer. And Madam Speaker, there was a quiet confidence my grandmother had in her own skin. And my mother, who I don't believe went past grade 6, but handwriting is better than mine, had a clear sense of not just this country, but our place in the world, loved God. And she used to say to me, I'm inferior to no man or woman. And I never fully embraced that until as I grew up. But my grandmother owned the land. In New Providence, as you heard, we didn't. We moved a lot. So I always used to say to young men when I began speaking in schools and youth events around the country that it was so silly of us, I used stronger words then, that we were blocking persons from coming through our corner. That's what young boys used to do. I bar you from coming through my corner. We were barring people from coming through a corner. We didn't own the corner, and we was renting the house through the corner where we lived. That was one of the tragedy. And so I feel privileged today that I'm in a position to leave an inheritance for my daughter. And many Bahamians have that sense of pride that they were able to eke out an existence, notwithstanding that, again, that they grew up through 6, 7 corners in Angliston, two times in Yellow Elder. My mom still lives in Yellow. I still visit Yellow Elder on a regular basis. So we have to create a society that we create conditions, the enabling conditions that Bahamians, when they work hard and smart on the basis of their merit, not their political affiliation, must be able to make it in the country. And one of the single most important possessions we ought to have that allow us to chart a course not just for ourselves, but for our immediate and extended family, is to have access to land. And to have access to that land with a degree of certainty that you can pass it on to your loved ones or whoever you decide without hindrance or fear of losing all that you have invested over time to take possession of. So land helps you to build successful businesses, allows you to build a home, a place of a house that you will make a home and you have security. It allows governments to intervene on behalf of its citizens and to have a social impact by creating the kinds of things that our people have called us to do, to build halfway houses for women and children who are vulnerable and do not have the means. After coming in conflict in their primary home, they do not have a means to transition to somewhere else. And a part of our role in creating a social safety net is providing those halfway homes. Or for persons who are transitioning, whether it's out of prison or rehabilitation facilities for substance abuse or mental or emotional challenges, a part of our job is to assist in that transition as one partner to that family that wishes to preserve the life of their children. We also have a responsibility for those members of our community who are looking for places during the day and sometimes for long-term care that they can place their children. I think right now of the differently abled community, both physically and emotionally and mentally, for those parents who have children who are on the autism spectrum and have for many years been looking for land that they are able to build that has the required features to accommodate not just children of school age, but adults that are on the spectrum. It is a costly proposition for our families who have differently abled persons to find a place. And so these bills in so many different ways lay the foundation for certainty around the ownership of these properties so that we are able to serve the various needs of our people. And so we support that principle, that we ought to have a proper land registry. We ought to ensure that we have a system that's transparent, that guard against bad actors seeking to grab land from the most vulnerable. And so today we support the bills. We have expressed the concerns, the gaps that we believe exist. We also have expressed concern in the earlier contributions about during the period where we are transitioning from the present system to the new system, the vulnerabilities, the unintended possible bad consequences that can occur, and the need for the government to be sensitive to the voices of various stakeholders who say we see the need for and support the need for the changes, but you ought to be mindful of the following, and they have listed them extensively. And we are duty-bound to listen to them and to make the necessary adjustments to guard against abuse. And so, Madam Speaker, the Free National Movement supports the modernization of land dealings. But modernization must come with transparency and proper planning and protection to make sure that we do not undermine the overall objectives of the bill. The Progressive Liberal Party, Madam Speaker, is once again asking the Bahamian people to trust them. And let me be clear, Madam Speaker, that no one organization has a monopoly on trustworthiness. And they have made their case about us, we may have made our case about them. But we are concerned in this administration where they have had an opportunity to restore trust in a population that have in many ways lost trust, that they have squandered far too many of those opportunities. I've said before, Madam Speaker, and obviously I don't seek to give sweeping generalizations, but there have been many times that even when the Progressive Liberal Party have good ideas, the good ideas have not developed to a point to produce good fruits, not because it wasn't a wonderful idea, not because they didn't have talent on the bench, but because sometimes they allow themselves to be overtaken by political considerations, and they have some, Madam Speaker, who have personal considerations or certainly tolerate in their network people who are personally motivated, and therefore the good ideas do not see the light of day. It is our hope that as we debate these bills and we deal with sensitive issues about the largest investment any family is likely to make, a home on Bahamian rock, that we do not suffer any of the unintended bad consequences. Madam Speaker, our charges of the government squandering an opportunity to create goodwill and trust among the Bahamian people is not without history. In other words, there's a context that has motivated me to say this. One of them, Madam Speaker, is we have cautioned this government, Madam Speaker, in terms of what they have done is they have avoided creating, Madam Speaker, a shareholder society in a way they can. Right now, today, Madam Speaker, as the government makes critical decisions, it should be looking for every opportunity to make sure that Bahamians across the length and breadth of the Bahamas can participate in economic opportunities when they emerge, when the government's providing it or when the private sector is providing it. Shareholding opportunities, right? Less people will tax you, the individual member of parliament, if you create opportunities for them to eat beyond you. The average Bahamian, if they have an opportunity, they do not want to, on a regular basis, ask you for a slow 5, a faded 10, or a wrinkled 20. Well, it's gone up now, 100 or 300 or whatever. But the bottom line is, if they can provide for themselves, generally, they're not gonna tax you. But when a government gives through direct, non-competitive bidding awards around $500 million, where they determine, you imagine that level of power that the member for Cat Island has, to make $500 million plus available to who he decides, aided and abetted by a cabinet that says they are committed to the broad empowerment of Bahamians. That's an incredible thing. And so what we're saying is, yes, it is a wonderful thing in a personal capacity to have that legacy that you empower this one, that one, and the other one. But we're saying there are thousands of Bahamians, had we done the projects differently, that we could empower. And so distrust is built in a society or cemented among those who are already distrustful when they see this kind of thing happening. That no matter what company I form, it ain't my time. Under this group, whatever group it is, I am not going to get a shot at a piece of the pie. And then distrust is also cemented when there's a failure to disclose the terms of the public-private partnerships or a refusal to follow any existing policy as it relates to public-private partnership. Distrust, Madam Speaker, is further cemented when the land that we have, the resources, natural, tangible and intangible, the marine environment, when again it is being utilized to benefit a selected group. One example, Madam Speaker, because we don't speak on air, despite the nonsense some people write about us making assertions without verification and proof. Nonsense. The mooring in Exuma. The Prime Minister, no less, signed a 21-year seabed lease for moorings in Exuma and elsewhere, linked to a senior official spouse in a deal that once it became public, it moved this administration to cancel that deal, though we have seen hardly any movement of the items that were there out. So it gives the impression that there may be a way of being paved, prepared for that deal to be revived. We don't know. All we say is the evidence of something canceled and it wholesale, in a wholesale manner being removed. We don't see it yet. Madam Speaker, so we are looking at a deal that is potentially $1 billion deal that was going to a select group of persons. And the government then later sought to clarify that there will be a stake in it for the Bahamian people. Madam Speaker, when you're doing something good that has broad-based potential impact, one would think you would wish to invite as many to come and participate. And to say to them, for those of you that didn't make it in this arrangement, we have so many ideas, so many different things we are doing to change the status quo. There will be room for you. So distrust is cemented when these kinds of things happen, when you have a $100 million increase in BPL bills because you botched a hedge program that was allowing you to provide, again, fuel at a predictable price. One of the things that help business to thrive is when there's predictability, when you could create a formula where you could count on the cost being A for an extended period of time, then you know you're good. And so you're not subject to the cost going up and down on the global market because you done locked this price in. But they failed to do that. Part out of neglect, part out of arrogance. And Madam Speaker, we all make mistakes in government. The Free National Movement made a fair amount of them. That's why we're on this side and they're on that side. So we understand that can happen. But once you discover you have made a mistake, it's okay to be transparent about it rather than double down on the error made or bad judgment made, because we all from time to time make bad judgment. Madam Speaker, we have watched the Prime Minister flip-flop on issues. For example, you've had two different ministers with responsibility for NIB. On two separate occasions, they would have come to the Parliament and made declarations that, in our view, had to be made because at the end of the day, you want NIB to survive. You want it to be solvent and functioning, to take care of people at the time they are entitled to their benefits. Only to have, on two separate occasions, with many months apart, a Prime Minister to reverse their decision. And we believe it had to do with the public's reaction in both cases to those ministers. And the Prime Minister has a gift. One of his gifts is to detect that the public ain't on their running, going in this direction. So he swoops in as if he had no knowledge of what was going on before and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to find another way to do that. But Madam Speaker, we recognize it for what it is. It's called flip-flopping. Madam Speaker, it is important for us to honor our word as policy makers. The Prime Minister promised that he would investigate documented complaints. And again, we're talking about trust. In the context of the bill, I'm making the point that if we are to embrace the value of these important bills, and they are important and potentially transformative, the people must be able to trust the stakeholders, the government officials who will preside over the implementation of the bills. Because what you would have heard from us is that while the legislation is important, potentially transformative, if you do not implement it properly, there can be unintended and bad consequences. If we are to trust that there will be good outcomes as predicted, as hoped for, then we must be able to trust those that preside over the bills. And so this list is just to say, listen, you have a deficit right now. People having some problems trusting given some of the decisions that you have made. And so again, Madam Speaker, we wish to trust that the Prime Minister will do as he said. He would have investigated some irregularities brought to the attention of the Prime Minister by members of the public service who committed their concerns in writing, and we expected a report from the head of the Immigration Department when she wrote relative to Minister Bell, being concerned about the swearing in of persons where she felt that the swearing in could have very well been contrary to the law of the Bahamas, and that if she was wrong, wanted to find out if the minister could cite the policy or the provision in law that authorized them. And that became a big issue, such that the Prime Minister, no less than the Prime Minister, promised to investigate and provide the report. To date, there is no report, Madam Speaker. The incident at the colonial, at the British colonial Hilton property, Madam Speaker. You know, I've seen some curious things written in some print medias recently about providing evidence. We have done so meticulously. We have laid documents. And I find it quite fascinating that people curiously do not have that recollection. And on this particular subject, what we do remember is that 2 ministers intervened in a matter. Persons who were already in custody was released, and there was no denying that there was a problem, that they had no documentation of basically who they were. And obviously, once that was found out, we found out that some persons had overstayed, at least one person by a year. That matter was resolved, Madam Speaker. In a matter of weeks, that matter was dealt with, the fees were paid, they got whatever the correct status are as it relates to work permit, and everybody went on their merry way. The only question we had asked, was there any sanction, was there any punishment for anyone who facilitated their movement or those that moved illegally in terms of overstaying? We wanted to know how they got in, who facilitated it, was there any penalty? It is not an unreasonable thing for a sovereign country for its citizens to ask. But we have felt so disrespected. Nobody to date thinks that we deserve an answer. And so I only ask the mother, the relative in New Providence, in any community, I only ask them, why is there one rule for your children and a different rule for others? And so, Madam Speaker, as I wrap up, Madam Speaker, I just wish to raise just a couple of quick things. Land is important, and therefore we have to protect it. People should not be allowed to squat on it, to take it over without penalty. That is why recently we introduced, Madam Speaker, a document that clearly outlined how we will deal with the issue of unregulated development, both to protect public land and private land, and to hold both persons who have come in and operating illegally, as well as the Bahamians who facilitate them. We've also said, as it relates to land, that we will utilize Bahamian land to reduce the cost of homes for Bahamians who wish to own their homes, or those who need preferential rates for rent before they transition into owners of those rental properties. We believe the government has a chance to lessen the burden of Bahamians by using land in a productive way for food security, for light manufacturing, that we should be more liberal after having investigated others who apply for land to make sure that those who are in light or heavy manufacturing, that they have access to a piece of the rock. Madam Speaker, we have sufficient resources to make a difference to assist Bahamians in doing transformative things in our country. Madam Speaker, we also believe, Madam Speaker, that the land that we have should also be used to help the tourism product. Today, we are battling a situation where we are relying more heavily on cruise passengers, and Madam Speaker, if I have just a couple of minutes to wrap up, we are using, Madam Speaker, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, we are using, Madam Speaker, land, we can use land, Madam Speaker, to create tourist attractions, not just in the over-the-hill community, that is cultural and heritage and tourist-oriented attractions, not just over the hill, but in our historic communities as well, Madam Speaker. But land is required for Bahamians who today cannot compete. If they have access to land on terms that they have agreed upon, they will be in a position for us to earn more money because tourists will have greater attractions. Bahamians will have resources to put in place things like multi-purpose Junkanoo shacks that will allow groups to become self-sustaining, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I believe that there is an opportunity for those of us who are public servants, who have carriage of Crown land, Treasury land, agriculture land. We have an opportunity to empower Bahamians who will know what to do with the land in order to generate wealth, not just for themselves, but for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so, Madam Speaker, I would have an opportunity to speak further on this matter, but I wish to close where I began. We have a lot of talented Bahamians, Madam Speaker, many of whom are overseas and wish to come home. We have an obligation to create an environment where they can come home and make a contribution, where their political affiliation does not determine their level of success, but their talent is able to do that, Madam Speaker. One of the biggest things we can do is to utilize our land in a way that empowers these Bahamians so that they can own a piece of the rock and have a commitment to what happens in this country from this point on. With that, Marco City supports the bill, Madam Speaker.